Okay, cool. I'm going to get started. Any look now? Coming across? Today, as well as introduce Claw Industries, who's going to be our first competitor. Our judges today are Ibrahim Van, Greg Byrne, Jim Chi, and Devin Nevius. Mispronouncing names is a hobby of mine. It's one of the privileges
right.
I have as a moderator. So just very quickly before I pass it on to Claw Industries, I have these cue cards here that I'll be lifting up for Claw Industries, letting them know when they have 10 minutes left, 5 minutes left, 2 minutes left, 1 minute left, and then when we need to stop. At 30 minutes, and I'll be timekeeping, we're going to need to stop the presentation entirely. During any time during our presentations, even on the title slide, the judges have the privilege of stopping the presentation and asking questions. And so with that, I will pass it to Claw Industries.
All right. Okay, so we've started. So my name is Jacob Kumba from Claw Industries. This is Veronica Snell. We are fundamentally changing the recycling industry. So there's a secret in recycling, and it's that it doesn't work. For the past 40 years, waste companies have been landfilling all the glass that we recycle. That's right, all those wine bottles that you threw in the recycling bin never made it to new bottles, just down the street to your landfill. Now, this isn't because the waste companies are evil. In fact, this is costing them over $200,000 every single year at each one of their facilities. It's because the glass is mixed with a bunch of paper, plastic, and metal, making it unusable for new bottles or anything else. And that's what's sitting right in front of you. Now, in the U.S., we landfill 8.3 million tons of this glass every single year. That's almost all the glass that we produce. At Claw Industries, our mission is to eliminate all of this waste glass. We are the first company to connect the concrete and recycling industry to lead the deployment of sustainable materials in the next wave of new infrastructure. So concrete, like you'd see in a sidewalk, is made of gravel, sand, cement, and water. The cement and water react. That's the glue that holds the concrete together. Now, cement is by far the most expensive material in concrete. It makes up 75% of the material cost. In addition to this, for every ton of cement produced, 1 ton of CO2 is released into the atmosphere, making it one of the most pollutive materials on the planet. At Claw Industries, we are paid by recycling facilities to take that waste glass. We then put it through our patent pending process and create Pantheon. And Pantheon is a partial replacement for cement and concrete. For recyclers, we offer a lower cost alternative than the landfill and ensure that the glass is actually recycled. After putting it through our process, Pantheon makes concrete stronger, lower cost, and lowers the carbon impact. Now, the core value proposition of Pantheon is that it increases the compressive strength of concrete by 11%. In addition to this, we beat the price of competitive materials by 25%. That is a huge decrease for the high-volume concrete industry. Now, so far, we have validated this in over 20 concrete projects, and I wanted to talk about a few of these. This was a residential sidewalk we completed with Tim Rufo from Barney & Dickinson in Binghamton, New York. A customer called Tim asking for a residential sidewalk, and Tim used Pantheon to increase the compressive strength of the concrete, and this became the first commercial application of Pantheon in the field. Another project was with Jamie Caddy from Upstone Materials and Clarkson University. Clarkson was expanding their biking infrastructure with a low embodied carbon bike path. Jamie used Pantheon to align with Clarkson's sustainability goals and submit a competitive bid. Now, so far, this traction has allowed us to raise $607,000 in non-dilutive funding.
Before I forget to ask, just explain to me what compressive strength means and where it matters.
Yep. So compressive strength is how much load concrete can take before it cracks. That is primarily the metric that concrete is purchased on when they're building a project, so how much weight it can support.
So is this better for things like sidewalks?
Yes.
Or how about a slab construction?
Yep, slab construction, basically a structure like a house foundation, footers, that's primarily where we play. So in that $607,000, we also have an SBIR with the EPA. Using this money, we purchased a production facility in Binghamton, retrofitted it with our process, and received the first delivery of waste glass at our facility last September from Shalene Taylor at Southern Tier Recyclers, and she paid us $35 per ton to take her waste glass. Now, we also have a letter of intent from Tim Rufo at Barney & Dickinson for 25 tons of Pantheon per month starting this April. And Tim decided to make the switch to Pantheon to increase the compressive strength of his concrete as well as save money on his materials. Now, you may be asking, why would a concrete industry member like Tim make a switch to a new material? Haven't they been making concrete the same way forever? Well, in the 1940s, the concrete industry began using fly ash from coal power plants and slag from steel foundries to replace cement in their concrete. However, as I'm sure you're aware, these industries are rapidly disappearing in the U.S., leading to shortages and price increases of 16% each year, destroying the bottom lines of these concrete plants. Just to put this into perspective, this is a map of fly ash and slag suppliers in the Northeast. And as you can see, there's only one in New York State where we're located. Compare that to the 57 recycling facilities paying high landfill tipping fees on all of their glass. Now, this void in the market has left a $12 billion opportunity globally. Our service addressable market in the U.S. is $1.3 billion, and our service obtainable market in New York is $26 million. Now, we operate a high-volume business, so we service a small logistical area. On the recycling side, we work with operations directors at recycling facilities in New York that process about 2,000 tons of waste glass each year, like Shalene Taylor at Southern Tier Recyclers. And Shalene is hit the hardest by high landfill tipping fees. On the concrete side, we work with mix directors at ready-mix concrete plants in New York that use about 3,000 tons of cement replacements each year, like Tim Rufo from Barney & Dickinson. And Tim is the first to be cut off when fly ash and slag shortages occur, causing him massive bidding problems. Now, I want to make it clear where Pantheon sits in the concrete value chain. We sell Pantheon as a raw material to mix directors like Tim who own concrete plants. Now, Tim then combines all these ingredients and sells concrete for things like concrete pads or garage floors. Now, our competitive advantage is our patent-pending process to remove contamination from waste glass. Specifically, we pull out all that paper, plastic, and metal. Now, why is that important? Well, our competitors who use clean glass to make a glass cement replacement include Urban Mining Northeast and Tricentrics. Now, our ability to use waste glass provides us with two advantages. One, we receive payment for our raw material, where our competitors must purchase clean glass to make their product. Second, we can leverage an 8.3 million ton per year stable supply chain to keep pace with the concrete industry's intense material demand. To protect this advantage, we filed a non-provisional patent back in 2021, and this is our IP structure. We have patent pending on the contamination removal process, And then for size reduction to actually make it into a powder, we're keeping that process as a trade secret and leveraging some existing technology as well from the mining industry. Now, I wanted to touch on the sustainability aspect of what we do. As I mentioned, for every ton of cement produced, 1 ton of CO2 is released into the atmosphere. Cement production accounts for 8% of global CO2 emissions. That's 4 times higher than the entire aviation industry. So you've probably heard of battery-powered planes or high-efficiency jet fuels, but nobody ever talks about how the runway is 4 times worse for the environment than the plane itself. Now, Pantheon replaces the high-carbon cement in the concrete mix, and that caught the attention of the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute. They completed a case study last summer showing Pantheon reduces the embodied carbon of concrete by 60 kilograms per cubic yard, since we only take about 3% of the energy compared to cement. So what does this magic environmental number actually mean in the real world? It means in all of our projects so far, we've prevented 3,200 kilograms of CO2. Scaling across the U.S., we can prevent 8.1 million tons of CO2 every single year, and by 2050, we can prevent 10.8 gigatons of carbon by scaling globally.
So are you finding out from your existing customers, does this matter to them right now? Do they care, or do they just like that it's cheaper?
Primarily on the concrete side, they like that it's cheaper and stronger. I will say that universities and other people who are putting out projects like Clarkson are looking for low embodied carbon concrete. So this gives them a leg up there as well.
Could you also talk about your process of cleaning the glass? What is involved? What sort of cost or resources do you need?
Yep. So glad you asked about cost. So I'll cover the cost section first. So this is a breakdown of per ton of how we process this waste glass. We receive it for $35 per ton. That's a revenue to us. Our cost of goods sold for the entire process is $81. The actual contamination removal makes up about $35 of that. Our logistics is about $29 per ton just because it is heavy. And then we sell Pantheon for $140, and that leaves us with about a $65 per ton profit. So really a big part of our cost of goods sold is actually taking out all that garbage. We actually have to dispose of that after. So that's another big section of that. So really our process is around removing paper, plastics. Those are the big things that we focus on.
Okay. How sustainable do you think that $35 a ton is when you scale?
Yep. So that's something we're going to get to in a little bit. Well, okay. We are. So hold that thought really quick. So these are big business model assumptions. So for recyclers, we're assuming that they will change their logistics pattern to basically drop off waste glass to our facility instead of taking it right to the landfill. Now, our operating assumption is that cost of goods sold of $81 per ton, and we're working to validate that at our facility in Binghamton. Now, on the concrete side, our major assumption is that they will switch their storage infrastructure to Pantheon. And this is really our key assumption, since this takes about 2 weeks of time to do, and it costs them $3,000, plus it ties up one of their silos. So this is our financial outlook for the next 3 years, and as you can see, the dual-sided nature of our business model provides us high revenues in the early years. However, we are a capital-intensive business, so we're going to reinvest this money back into the company to continue to grow. Now, as we talked about with what happens when the recycling facility catches on to this and they stop paying us to take waste glass? Well, we've devised a 3-phase strategy to scale Claw Industries. Phase 1 is our production facility in Binghamton. That'll do about 2,000 tons of Pantheon per year. Now, this is going to validate the initial business model that we have, and the great part about this facility is it's already funded. Now, Phase 2 is where we will build large facilities in Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston. We will locate next to recyclers to cut down on the logistics costs. And what we're trying to prove at these facilities is that mixed directors will uptake a new material. These facilities will produce about 25,000 tons of Pantheon per year.
So what's the footprint, just the square footage of the lot or area for a big plant?
About 35,000 square feet.
Okay.
Yep. Got it. Now, Phase 3 is where we'll begin licensing this technology directly to recycling facilities after validating that we can sell this to mixed directors in different regions. This will allow us to not only scale across the U.S., minimizing our capital expenses, but it will also get rid of our reliance on the waste glass revenue and move to a more stable licensing revenue model. To bring Pantheon to market, we've completed those 20 concrete projects as well as purchased our production facility. The first truck of Pantheon is being sent out to Tim this month, and from there we'll move to that larger facility in New York City by the end of this year. In 2024, we'll begin operations in Boston to penetrate 45% of our service sustainable market. Now, how did this all start? Well, I was touring our local recycling facility back in 2019 with my co-founder, Jack, when we learned that all the glass we had been placing in the recycling bin was just ending up right in our landfill. And this problem stuck with me since where I grew up is not too far from our landfill. And landfill encroachment is a real problem in my hometown as well as many other rural communities across the U.S. Now, Jack is our CEO, leading the deployment of Pantheon into the market from his time at BAE Systems and LC Drives. Last December, Jack left his job at BAE to come on to Claw Industries full-time. I am our COO, leading our process development for my time at C&P Advanced Mechanical Solutions, working on Tesla and Amazon projects. We recently brought Veronica on to help us with our non-dilutive grant funding from her experience at the Alzheimer's Association, and Nick Walling is our Chief Automation Officer for his experience with AWS and Microsoft Azure, since that's a core component of how we're going to scale our company. Now, in entrepreneurship, there's a lot of talk about passion and grit on your team, but what does that actually mean? At Claw Industries, it means that Jack is back in Binghamton doing everything he can to fill that trailer for Tim. It means that we bet all of our funding, every last penny that we had, to purchase a production facility to prove our business model. And it means that I have $122 in my personal bank account. It's the most comfortable that I've ever been. So, why are we the best team to lead Pantheon into the market? Because we're the ones that are already doing it. And at this point, I'll pass it to Veronica.
What we are building fundamentally changes recycling. It is extremely difficult to build what we have built and would not have been possible without the passion of our team members, our advisory board of concrete experts, our grant funders, and our business strategists. Our experience in creating sustainable concrete, scaling businesses, and passing regulatory hurdles positions us to continue our revolution in recycling and concrete industries. So we are seeking a $1.1 million investment in the form of a SAFE agreement. And with this investment, we will be able to outprofit a production facility in New York City. Specifically, we are looking at purchasing equipment that traditional lenders are not willing to finance right now. And so by creating this second production facility, it's going to validate our stability process and enable us to license our technology in 2025.
Within 12 years, we will be acquired by one of the large cement companies such as Cemex or Lehigh Hansen. Notable sales of cement replacement companies include the sale of Boral Materials last year for $755 million. Now, cement replacement companies are typically acquired at 7 to 10 times EBITDA, placing us in a strong position as flash and slag dry up across the U.S. Now, how will the new venture competition prize help Claw Industries? Well, it will allow us to purchase a roll-off trailer to secure Tyson Ryob from Delaware County Recycling as our second waste glass customer. Delaware County's recycling facility is located on their landfill, and they aren't large enough to have their own logistics infrastructure to get waste glass to a different end market. To get around this, we will go pick up Tyson's waste glass to keep it out of their landfill. So Clarkson and the University of Arkansas have already thrown in for the truck to drive this trailer, and I'm already signed up for CDL classes. And since the new venture competition will make the difference for Claw Industries and Delaware County, we will paint the University of Oregon right on the side of the trailer. There you go. And that is why we're up here in jeans, steel toes, and sweatshirts, because we are actually going to keep waste glass out of our landfills and solve the sustainable material problems that we face. We're going to need to get down and get our hands dirty. Thank you.
Great. I'm going to throw a couple of questions at you guys before you finalize this here. For the patent.
Yep.
How is it being filed internationally?
We are currently filed non-provisionally in Mexico and Canada.
That's it? Europe, Asia, nothing?
Nope. Europe doesn't have as much of a recycled glass problem.
Right.
So glass is pretty expensive there.
Okay.
So, not in Asia either.
Okay. That might be something you may want to consider, especially on the Asia side. A couple of other questions related to, instead of purchasing some of these, would it make sense to use some of the funds to lease some of these facilities?
So we primarily would like to lease the location that we're at.
Okay.
And then some of the traditional equipment, such as pneumatic trailers for delivering the Pantheon itself. That is things that we want to try to lease or finance on pretty favorable terms.
So it's not all going to so this is all the purchases are for proof of concept then?
Yeah, it's things like typically like banks don't want to do something like a proprietary process. They don't know what it is.
Okay. No, totally understand that part. And then the last part to this is, how does this translate to, say, consumer, like ready-mix type of product?
Yes, so that's actually something that we're looking into specifically with Home Depot and Lowe's. Specifically with Zachary. So what we want to do is, if we can validate this in the ready-mix concrete industry, like the guys that are driving the trucks, that's going to give us a lot of projects in the ground that we can go to them and say, this is a great way for you to market an environmental product and then upcharge the actual bag itself. So we would sell them a raw material.
Has this already been presented to both?
Not to both, no.
Okay. Either one?
Either? No.
Nothing yet. Okay. Nothing on the consumer side. Okay. Still in process then.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So this technology is purely for glass only, not for anything else, correct?
That's correct. So
can the separation process where you're cleaning out the glass with the other garbage, can that part be applied to other materials?
Yes. That is something we're looking into specifically on construction and demolition debris. We really think that's the next part of the recycling industry that needs a lot of help. So that's where we want to go next with the actual process itself.
Plastics, can that be separated instead of just the debris?
We haven't done any testing with plastics. Okay. I mean, aside from pulling it out of what we get, further separating the plastics, we would probably have to add some steps to the process to do that.
Got it.
A bunch of questions. First off, great. I love the business plan. Love the idea.
Thank you.
And you guys have obviously made a lot of progress on that, so congratulations on your success so far. So in no particular order, one question I have is that $35 a ton for processing this waste, to me, it struck me as a very low cost, which either would mean labor's free, like you guys are saying, we'll just do it ourselves, sweat equity, or it's going to be less defensible in the market, even with a patent. There's not going to be as much secret sauce built into it if it's that cheap to process by the ton. That was one thing that stood out to me. So I'll pause there.
Yeah, so $35, let me jump back to that slide really quick just to make sure it's clear. So $35 is what we receive from the recycling facility when they drop the glass off. So basically, we're competing with the landfills. Basically, so like our landfill tipping fee in our area is about $45, so we beat it by $10. The cost of processing is $81 per ton. So basically, a large chunk of that is energy.
How much of that is the processing to get a finished good? How much of that is your proprietary process of the $81?
How much of the cost of goods sold?
Yeah.
About close to $35, $40 per ton.
That's right. That's what I'd heard.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And so that was where I was.
Okay. I understand.
That's what stuck out to me. So, and that's up to you to figure out. But how proprietary is that process that you're doing? Could it be imitated marginally, and could a bigger fish kind of eat your lunch on that? It would just be one question I would have. Mm-hmm. Another question I noticed. I think the model of licensing it, kind of a royalty model, is great to create scale. It's basically your IP and your secret sauce is how to do this process, and then it's evidently fairly inexpensive for companies to build the capacity, recyclers to build the capacity to do it themselves, and they would be paying you for the knowledge transfer. But I didn't see a lot in this or in the plan about how that would actually happen. So once you've validated it, what is that really going to look like? I'm not putting you on the spot to answer right now unless you'd like to, but that would be something that is a really critical component of how are you actually going to license this to recyclers. And I would really think through that. And then finally, you mentioned a couple times that the technology behind it is going to be a key component. But there's very little content around why is the technology an important part of the IP. And how does that give you competitive advantage? And I would encourage, again, you can answer that if you'd like, but I would encourage you to make sure that that's explained well in your presentation, in your business plan, of where does that lend itself, and what are the costs behind it?
Yeah, so I will say the biggest part with the process is like recyclers haven't been able to solve the glass problem for about 40 years. So actually, this coming month, we're getting a truckload from Shalene. We're getting it from Waste Management's facility in Syracuse. And that's kind of like how we want to position the licensing. One way that we've thought about doing it is based on what their contamination level is. Each recycling facility has a different amount of garbage in their glass, basically. It can range from 20% to 40%. That's one way that we've thought about structuring the license is like, how much are you actually using the process? Like, is it a quick cleanup or is it a lot of material that you're pulling out? So that's some thoughts that we've had about it. But really, we want to validate those 3 facilities in Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston first.
Got me. What comes off of this? How toxic is what's coming off? Can it go straight back to the landfill, or do you have to do something special with it?
It can go straight back to the landfill. So basically, like, we're just pulling the glass out, sending the rest back. So I will say, in terms of our process, there's no chemicals involved, so it's not like there's any environmental concern there.
Somehow you're breaking it down, pulling off all the labels, the metal, and everything else out of this. So have you done the math? Typically in an area, how much can glass substitute? Is it a big piece of the concrete for replacement, or is it a tiny piece?
Yep. So we replace about 20% to 30% of the cement and concrete.
Okay. Sorry. Let me say this in a different way.
Yep.
How much can glass typically in a market area replace in the concrete that's being produced in that market area? Is it a small piece of the total volume, or can it be could it be 20 to 25%?
So it wouldn't be 20-25% of everything. So you could probably take about 40% of the concrete market. Basically, there's a lot more concrete than there is glass. For example, in New York State, there's about 445,000 tons of waste glass that we could utilize, but there's much more concrete.
Okay, but you think you could get to 40% of the concrete being produced? Wow.
In New York.
Lock up the resource. This is... lock up the resource, because I heard there's a freight circle constraint on this, right? And I love the licensing model at the recyclers, because end of the day, this works. That's where I think it goes. Because you don't have a very big footprint.
Right.
Doesn't sound overly complicated. You want to touch this stuff as little as possible. The more you move it, the more you erode your margins.
Yes.
And at some point, the carbon replacement will start to sing.
Yeah.
And I would also say, so you've been funding this with grants?
Yep.
Keep doing that. There's tons of money out there for this, right? That's
That's
Veronica's
why Veronica's on the team.
I'll add to that comment in terms of this is going to become a logistics game, not a technology game.
Yeah.
Just as a whole. Because the part that's going to add another layer of cost that may or may not have been factored into some of this is that if you start going to consumer side of this, that handoff to the retail network is going to be a huge cost for logistics. So just keep that in mind.
Well, I'm also thinking through the model for the royalties, which I think if it could work, it would be the way to do it. But I have real concerns about that. So without telling us the actual secret sauce, is there equipment? Like, I'm picturing, you said it's energy intensive, I'm picturing like a boiler and then a degree of like filtration that the waste falls through, some way that it's segmented out, and then you have a clean product So what's the capital structure for setting up the facility in the first place?
Yeah, so really that's closer to, I think it kind of lays it out on this side a bit better. But like for the actual, like just setting up a proprietary process at a recycling facility is closer to about $750,000 for a mid-sized recycling facility. Now, one of the things we want to do in the way that we could structure some sort of loyalty agreement is like we would actually kind of produce the equipment itself, since this is stuff that we make in-house, at least parts of it are. So then that would be something that we would set up at that facility. So maybe we could work out something like a payback structure or something like that. But I will say, just touching on the logistics, something that we've seen is the ability to deliver this material to a concrete plant is actually one of our biggest competitive advantages at this point. Shipping, you need these special trailers to ship around powders like cement, and the fact that we're getting one of those now is hugely beneficial to us.
So when you get bigger, that just becomes part of the game and shaving nickels out of the whole thing.
Yep.
Well, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but that actually isn't part of the business model in the future at all, right?
When you go to licensing, this won't be, no.
Yeah, so that's just a proof of concept.
Yeah, that's like we do need to, like at least for those big three facilities, we do need to connect the dots.
So that should just be like the cheapest way you could possibly do it short term to prove out the model.
Yeah.
You're not buying a national fleet of those.
No.
That's not part of your competitive advantage at all. Right? So, I mean, I would just say in your business plan and your presentation, firstly, what I would want to hear a little bit more of is you thinking through how's that. Okay, so you proof of concept, let's say that's successful, then now what? So we have this $750,000 investment, here's how we're going to finance it, here's how we're going to sell it to a facility, and here's their ROI based on the financing and the debt structure for each facility. That would be really interesting. And maybe you did that and missed it, but I didn't hear a lot of that. Okay. But that's the business model, right? That's where, this is secret sauce, and then that's how you actually get it to market.
Yeah, that's the long term.
Yeah.
Now, if I can follow up on that thread, I was struck by in your business plan how massive you're going to do the scaling up. Seemed like from 1 year to another, it's more than 10x scale up. I was curious. I don't know the industry well. When you do that, is it a linear scale, cost linearly scales, or process becomes exponentially more challenging or more costly? Do you have some feel about that?
Yeah, so we gain economies of scale as we start to scale our process. We're already starting to see that from going from bench scale to the facility in Binghamton, which is a very small facility, and then going up. The reason we were able to get those numbers is basically...
Your time's up.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your presentation. You have some time to shake hands with the judges if you'd like, and then after that we'd ask you to leave so they can deliberate and provide the final scores.
You got it. All right. Well, thank you all very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Well done.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good morning again, everyone. My name is Ian Woodrock, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. Just wanted to welcome Team Lymphedema and introduce you to your judges, Ibrahim Van, Greg Byrne, Jim Chi, and Devon Nucleus. Today, you're going to have 30 minutes to be able to present your venture to the judges. The judges have the privilege of stopping your presentation during any time to ask questions. I'll be providing you notices when you have 10 minutes left, 5 minutes left, 2 minutes left, and 1 minute left. And then when you're at time, I'll politely ask you to stop. Feel free to present.
Great. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Hunter from Lymphedema, and this is my teammate Benji. He'll be presenting with me today. Our group is a group of biomedical engineering graduate students from the Johns Hopkins University Center for Bioengineering Innovation and Design. And Benji has experience with electrical engineering and sensors, and I myself have 4 years of medical device industry experience. And today we're going to be talking to you about our mission to enable life-changing lymphedema screening for breast cancer patients and beyond. So a breast cancer patient's biggest fear is their cancer coming back, but their second biggest fear is developing the disease of lymphedema. And this is a rational fear to have because 20% of women with breast cancer will develop lymphedema as a result of their cancer treatment. So what is lymphedema? Well, it's a chronic and progressive vascular disease that is caused by damage to the body's lymphatic system. And we need the lymphatic system to flush out toxins and to fight infection. But it can become damaged through common cancer treatments like surgery to lymph nodes, radiation to those areas, and even chemotherapy. Right now, there are 800,000 women in the United States that are suffering from breast cancer-related lymphedema. And every year, more than 40,000 women will develop it. Lymphedema becomes completely debilitating if it's left untreated. It develops in stages, as you can see here, and over time, a patient's arm becomes very swollen, many times its original size with fluid, and eventually it permanently remodels into fat and fibrosis. No matter what stage a patient is in, any of these pictures here, their life can become completely disrupted and driven by having to care for this disease. Because look at everything they have to go through. They go to physical therapy many times a week for lymphatic massage. They have to be wrapped in layers of compression garments, wearing a pneumatic compression pump for hours at a time at home. They have to wear a compression sleeve, sometimes for 23 hours a day, even sleeping in one at night. And at late stages of the disease, they have very expensive and complicated microvascular surgeries, and they're very susceptible to frequent infections that can be life-threatening. All of this results in $8,000 in direct insurance claims annually for the rest of a patient's life. So how can we prevent patients from ever getting to that place? Well, we know that early intervention leads to superior clinical outcomes. But right now, patients only go to their doctor's office after they begin to experience symptoms like swelling or tingling in their arm. But at this point, their disease has progressed past the earliest stages, and treatment is not as effective as it could have been. With Lymphedema, our goal is to detect the earliest warning signs of lymphedema so that patients can be referred for short-term compression therapy, which has been clinically proven to slow or even halt the disease progression. And a recent breakthrough research study has demonstrated just this. Early detection with bioimpedance, a sensitive method to detect fluid buildup, has been shown to reduce lymphedema disease progression. In this study, this was a 1,200 patient study with follow-up for 5 years, and over half of the patients who would have gotten chronic lymphedema were able to be prevented from ever having to live with this disease chronically because early detection and refer them to treatment that they started right away. We have designed Lymphedema to fill very clear gaps in the market. Our only real competitor is the tape measure. And existing commercial solutions like ImpediMed and a pyrometry device, those are very, very expensive. They're limited to use in a clinic alone, and they're very bulky for patients to use. Lymphedema is the only solution that provides affordable early detection in a home care setting. And we have designed Lymphedema with patients in mind. Our device is comprised of a sensor and reusable, or single-use patch electrodes. And together, those devices transfer information wirelessly via Bluetooth to a mobile application on a patient's phone, and then also an online web portal for clinicians. This way, patients and their doctors have access to their own tissue measurements over time, and decision-making can be shared.
Hunter, if I can ask a
Yeah.
question, come back to the competition slide. How is the technology with ImpediMed or perimetry different than LymphoSense? Are they using same sort of measurement technique or different?
Yep, so it's actually a little bit of both. So perimetry uses optical systems, and it just scans the arm. ImpediMed uses bioimpedance alone, and it's a scale that patients stand on. And we actually use both of those methods in ours.
Could you give me an idea about whether they could scale the device for home use?
So ImpediMed does not have the R&D resources to actually make this a smaller product. Their main scale is mainly, they started for body composition, and the form factor, we do not think they could scale down because what they have is extremely over-engineered and it can't be simplified. We actually have access to a very cutting-edge chip that our device is the only medical device product to use currently that does this bioimpedance software on a very small scale. So before, these devices were very bulky and they were the size of laptop computers to use. But we have access to this new, very cutting edge technology that is really able to be miniaturized. And also, this is not used. There's only 770 of these devices in use worldwide. Frankly, the company is bleeding money a little bit. We've done a deep dive into their financials. In no way do they have resources to make this jump themselves for R&D.
Okay. So that chip is interesting because you mentioned, where do you get it? Did you design yourself, or how do you?
Yeah, we have a partnership with a third-party supplier for this.
And you have a priority use of it? Mm-hmm. They're not going to sell it to anybody else?
No.
Okay.
All right. So this really is our value with early detection. Early detection enables referral to treatment, and early treatment improves clinical outcomes. So once a patient and their doctor get a notification that lymphedema is developing, we're going to use a benchmark of around a 6.5 change. That is what will trigger an alert. Then their doctor would get an alert to say, this patient needs to be referred to short-term compression therapy. And that ultimately is what improves clinical outcomes. LymphoSense is easy for patients to use. You can think of it like a blood pressure cuff. It's not a wearable device. Instead, you put it on, you take a measurement, then you take it off and you're done with it. The whole process takes under 5 minutes. And we envision LymphoSense being used more frequently directly after cancer treatment, just 1 time per week for the first 6 months. Then after that, for the next 2.5 years, patients would take a measurement just 1 time per month. And we recommend this monitoring period of 3 years because we know that 90% of lymphedema cases develop within this time frame after cancer treatment. Yep.
So just 1 time per month. That's it. All right. And other question, I may be getting ahead. How far along are you on actually that being a reality, the device? Oh, good.
Right. Can we take a look?
Yeah, I can pass it around.
And who developed it?
So we've been developing this in collaboration with our clinical sponsor, Baxter.
Through the school?
Yes.
Got it. So Baxter provides funding for this particular type of research.
Yep. We have a grant from them. Yep.
Got it. And how many years has that been in development?
So this device has been in development for around 3 years. We have the privilege to adapt something that they were already using for IV infiltration and create a new algorithm to detect lymphedema with this. Yeah, they're a great partner to us.
So the hardware is reused, but the software algorithm is yours?
Yes. Yep. We've adapted a little bit of the hardware.
Okay.
Right. Is this technology beholden to Baxter?
It is not. Yep, it was co-developed. We're currently negotiating a licensing agreement right now with them.
And the sensor part is independent? Like, how do you attach
Yeah,
the
so we have a reusable electrode as well that is printed with conductive material.
And how does it
Yep, it just
communicate?
plugs in.
Oh, it's plugged into the
Plugs
system.
in, yep, goes into the electrode, and then this actually does Bluetooth to a tablet. So our customers have validated this need. We've done more than 70 one-on-one interviews with clinicians and patients who have lymphedema and also patients who do not have lymphedema. And we've heard that 98% of the patients we've spoken to would use a lymphedema monitoring device. We've also spent over 500 hours in plastic surgery clinics and physical therapy clinics, really listening to these patients and designing something they themselves would use. And we've gotten to involve very prominent patient advocates from day one in our development process. And one of them actually told us, LymphoSense would empower me to regain control of something that often feels outside of my control. And right now, market trends are on our side to enter this space. Healthcare models are increasingly moving towards patient-centered care, giving patients access to their own data. And people who set payment are expanding reimbursement codes. So the AMA has expanded reimbursement codes for home monitoring very rapidly in the past few years, and that shift was only accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Additionally, clinical evidence is building day by day that early detection is what reduces the disease progression. And worldwide, patients and patient advocates are building momentum around this disease. In the last few years, a new designation was released where leading research centers can become lymphedema centers of excellence. And this means that they provide full-spectrum lymphedema prevention and treatment for these patients. So our market is a $64 million entry market, and that is 10% penetration of the breast cancer population. And these numbers are based on our own revenue models. But we're not going to stop at breast cancer. We're choosing that population as the foothold into the market because this is the largest patient group affected by this in the US, and they're also the most vocal about the need for early detection. But if you are at risk of lymphedema, you can develop this from other cancers as well. Prostate cancer, gynecologic cancer, sarcoma, melanoma, even other types of surgery. When we are able to help those patients detect their risk of lymphedema, then our market grows to $2 billion. And eventually, we see ourselves becoming the standard of care for lymphedema detection and monitoring. There are already 10 million Americans living with lymphedema, and if they had a way to track their treatment and see how their different treatments impact their disease progression, they would benefit from our device. When we are able to serve those patients, our market grows to $9.5 billion.
Our sensor uses a combination of two different sensing modalities. The first, bioimpedance spectroscopy, as well as near-infrared spectroscopy. And these two sensors work in parallel to detect changes in underlying tissue fluid content. We also have the custom soft and flexible electrodes, which are very comfortable to wear and are custom printed for the patients. So together, these two sensors will work and become much better able to detect these changes as opposed to if they would be using one or another. Together, they're able to eliminate a lot of false positives and false negatives. And as you can see, it fits in the palm of your hand compared to the previous incarnations of the device before recent advances in technology, because they were very big and bulky, like the ImpediMed Sozo scale, requiring you to only be able to use them in the clinic. Our target is to have this be available to use in homes. And to take advantage of this technology, we have filed a preliminary patent application for both our sensor and our electrodes. We've also been working to collect benchtop testing data using this device and comparing it to in-human results from IV infiltration that were collected from our industry partners at Baxter. And as you can see, the benchtop testing results mirror the IV infiltration results. With before there's any kind of fluid injection, it's fairly stable, and once we inject fluid, there's a nice linear decrease in impedance. To further validate this study, we will be conducting a clinical study this spring and summer at the Johns Hopkins Medical Institute to validate these algorithms on patients with and without lymphedema to understand, to make sure that we can properly detect these anomalies in data.
Can you come back to the one page more?
Sure.
Yeah. Do you have repeated measurements? Fluid comes in, you test, then goes out, test again?
Yes.
Comes in?
So we've conducted various tests on different kind of benchtop models to understand the rate of fluid injection versus how deep under the skin, and we're always able to consistently get this curve that you can see, this downward linear curve.
So you take like 10 minutes before you get a readable result?
Yes, so we'll take about, let's say, a 10-minute baseline where we just measure the impedance, and then we'll inject it at a constant rate, which is about what happens during an IV infiltration.
Well, lymphedema develops very slowly over time. It's not like a critical event where you get this huge influx of fluid. Instead, it is a very slow and like micro accumulation of fluid. So what we're using for our benchtop testing is just an IV rig that is pumping at a very, very slow rate. And we've done our tests for, I think, 6 hours was the longest we've done. So very, very slow. And the good news is we're able to detect changes of 1 milliliter. That's the resolution of our device currently.
And in the daily use case, I assume, will have a baseline of what the patient's status is. Then every day you monitor and see the delta,
Yes.
right?
Exactly. That's the
what
key, is the change. So just a snapshot itself, that's not, the number itself is not super useful. It has to be compared to the patient's own baseline. So we're just looking at that change over time, and we're probably going to use the 6.5% marker of change because that's what's been established by the literature as clinically relevant.
Training on this, both the clinics and for the patient, is this down to be really simple?
Yes, we have involved patients and the doctors from the very first day of this, and we're doing human factors testing for the FDA that will make sure this is easy and genuinely foolproof to use.
Even for a guy who doesn't listen, doesn't like to read directions.
It should be as simple as, should be as simple as putting on a patch that's almost like a Band-Aid.
Here's where you put it, here's how it works.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So how else are we going to get this on the market? So we have identified a clear path to regulatory approval consisting of a 510K with the ImpediMed SOZO device that we've previously discussed as our clear predicate. We've validated this approach with the law firm Hogan Lovells, and we've also recently had a mock pre-sub meeting with the FDA where we've received positive feedback on our approach. LymphoSense will be sold directly to clinics for their oncologists and surgeons to prescribe to the lymphedema patients. The sensors will be priced at $300, the patch electrodes at $10 each, and the software subscription at $38 per patient per month. And the good news right now is that we have various clinics and clinicians ready to advocate for purchasing this device to the hospital purchasing departments.
Just kind of curious, once a month, is that all, obviously that's all you need? You know people are going to want to do this more often.
Yes.
Okay. So does it make sense to bring your price down to encourage that?
I think what we are basing the once a month on is the reimbursement codes that we would like doctors to be able to take advantage of so that they are able to recoup the cost of this bulk capital purchase, which is still relatively, it's 98% cheaper than the commercial ImpediMed solution. But we know patients will want to use this more frequently. There's nothing stopping them from using that except the price of the electrode. We envision that if people did want to take more frequent measurements, if you bought more of something, it would be cheaper. So we would probably have tiered purchasing plans for that.
So this would be similar to like a glucose monitor kind of a thing where, you know, you're using the test strips and you're consuming those where you have the one.
Exactly. We've actually based our pricing off of things like the Dexcom G6, G7 to see how much people are willing to pay.
Mm-hmm. And then how does this, since this is a little more involved of a patch, what's the disposal process?
Yeah, it's not super, it doesn't need like a separate disposal like a battery or anything because the actual patch itself is just like a flexible Band-Aid-like system, so you can put it in regular trash.
So it's not going to, since it's just like a Band-Aid, it's a topical, it's not considered bio-waste.
Right, it doesn't prick the skin or anything like that.
So, okay. Still, but it still goes back into the landfill.
It does,
Okay.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any IP on the patch? I might have missed it.
Yes, so we have filed a provisional patent application on the patch.
Are those just electrodes, or there are some active or passive devices on that?
The patch is just the electrode configuration, yes.
So right now you've got the device, you've got the patches. Is the software developed?
That is what we're working on now. We do have a software developer.
Yeah.
And our clinical study will help us with that even more because we'll have this huge influx of data to train it on.
Right. So the good news about LymphoSense is it also poses a very compelling economic proposition for these clinics. With working with a reimbursement consultant, we will be filing a location modification for an existing CPT code for lymphedema assessment. This will be reimbursed by both Medicare and private insurers at $140 and $190 respectively. We plan to have physicians bill for 36 measurements over the course of 3 years, as previously discussed. And from this, these clinics can expect to make about $5,000 per lymphedema patient using LymphoSense. And when you consider that some of the lymphedema centers of excellence, which are the top lymphedema institutes in the country, are caring for anywhere between 1,000 and 5,000 lymphedema patients at a time, they can potentially earn $3 to $13 million just by having patients use LymphoSense for 3 years.
I have a question for you.
Oh, yes.
You talked about the cost structure behind the sensor and the electrodes. You didn't talk about manufacturing. And how far along that sensor is in terms of being prepped for manufacturing?
So we are planning to partner with third-party manufacturing facilities for that. Right now, at the amount that we are able to produce, the cost for the chip is around $50 to manufacture, and the electrodes are around 75 cents to manufacture.
We have manufacturing costs here.
Yeah, I saw that. Where would it be produced?
Most likely, it would be produced at a partnering facility in California.
Oh, actually domestically produced?
Yeah.
Okay. And you've to some degree, I realize this is still preliminary, but you've validated that cost structure that's a landed cost from.
Yeah, that was a quote directly from them.
Yeah. So in terms of LymphoSense's revenue, we, from these financial projections, are projecting to make about $25 million in revenue by 2028 with a market capture of about 4%. And we will be entering the market through a 3-tiered expansion strategy, starting with the 26 lymphedema centers of excellence all around the country, which are the leading institutes for lymphedema care, which actually includes OHSU right here, which is a fun fact. And we plan to leverage a lot of our existing relationships with some of these institutes, including the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Maryland, the Wellspan York Hospital in Pennsylvania, and the Stony Brook University Hospital in Long Island, New York. For our timeline, we will be spending the next 3 years finishing our product development and R&D and conducting more clinical studies to validate our technology. And by 2024, we will be submitting our 510(k) application with hopeful FDA approval coming the next year in 2025 so we can enter the market. By 2026, we'll be expanding beyond our initial market and begin being profitable. So we are asking for $2.5 million in seed funding, and thus far we have raised $274,000. The majority of our funds will be allocated to continued clinical studies and product development, as well as employee salaries. And our most important value milestones are our initial in-human testing, the development of an MVP resulting in a design freeze, and our human factors and usability testing for the FDA. We have also identified several exit opportunities for LymphoSense at companies such as Hologic, Essity, and Smith & Nephew, all of which have interests in women's health and lymphedema. So why should you trust us? Well, we are a very talented group of graduate biomedical engineering students with experiences in industry, engineering, research, and business, and we've been working on this project for over a year, and we're very dedicated. And we also have a wonderful advisory board consisting of a very diverse group of people, ranging from industry experts with experience in medtech startups, world-class surgeons in the lymphedema space, key patient advocates and influencers, and business experts and professors. We ask you all, please help us on our mission to protect the women in your lives who will be treated for cancer by supporting LymphoSense. Thank you, and we can take any additional questions.
Well done.
Thank you.
I like only 26 potential places to start.
Yeah.
It's real simple and real straightforward.
It is, and this year we've been working on developing relationships with some of those key institutions so that they know who we are and we are able to potentially think of them for a pilot study down the line.
Have you gotten any initial reactions from them?
Yeah, Johns Hopkins is really wonderful. We're obviously doing one study now that's more preliminary. We definitely would like them to be a pilot site. We've gotten to engage really early on with Memorial Sloan Kettering, who is fantastic in New York as well. And we were in Houston last month, and MD Anderson also. We have some great connections there, and they would be quite willing to look at our product.
So one thing you mentioned earlier that I didn't see in the thread later is Baxter, and you said they may have some sort of ongoing interest in this product, which would make market sense, business sense. So what's the liability, if you will, there?
Yeah, so that we're working on the licensing agreement right now. What we have talked about very openly with Baxter and our mentors there is that this product does not fit into their existing portfolio. And so because of that, they are more focused on in-hospital monitoring, and they have some products for microvascular surgery, but this is totally separate from that. They have resources, they have a sales force, but this is not a fit for their portfolio. So for that reason, I don't think the liability is that high in terms of them wanting to bring this in-house and hold on to it. Instead, I think we're really going to be working to license so that we can do this on our own.
One thing that makes sense. Thanks for that answer. It's a good answer. One thing that you talk about, and I agree with Greg, that the really focused approach to the lymphedema centers is a great way to go. But in medical, at least my understanding, limited understanding, is it's very kind of sales rep driven, it's channel driven. And so what I didn't see or hear much about that approach. How do you penetrate those facilities?
Yeah, so through targeted sales reps.
You basically outsource to?
Yeah, I mean, we would be looking to hire in 2025 at least 2 sales reps, one to focus a little bit more on the Northeast and one to focus on West Coast. And then that will expand. I think we're hoping to have at least 6 sales reps by 2026 to kind of give broader coverage to those accounts. We know it will be focused by getting people on the ground actually in these hospitals, speaking to surgeons to actually make a difference there.
Final question for me, sorry to steal the airtime, but tell us about the software. That wasn't mentioned much. I mean, conceptually there, but you didn't talk at all about where it is in process, how you protect that IP, what's the development cycle on that?
Yeah, so the patent does mention the algorithm, but the actual specifics of the algorithm and how we calculate the differences would be kept as a trade secret. This is the part of the project that needs the most work right now, but we think that we have done a lot of the hard legwork up front with the hardware and getting that together. So the software really is the next component, and that's what needs the most work right now that we're actively pursuing.
How much of the $2.5 million would go towards that?
For product development, the main features that would be needed are finishing the integration and packaging it a little bit better, and then the software. I would probably say, if we want to go back to the breakdown of the slide. Yeah, so product development is 22%, probably half of that for software, so around 11%.
Just for what it's worth, that sounds cheap to me. That sounds a little low to me, personally.
Okay, thank you.
How much of your time are you two spending on this? Is this a full-time gig or is...
This is our full-time project for our master's program. We're graduating in May, and we will have 3 people staying on full-time from our team, and then 3 of us part-time as consultants. So we do have half of our team will be pursuing this full-time.
All right.
Who gave you the $274,000 so far?
We've earned that from the Rice Business Plan competition. We won a $250,000 investment from Texas Medical Center Innovation Fund, and then we've won around $24,000 in cash just from various other business competitions.
Good for you guys. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask about technology again. Now, how important it is that you use a patch. Have you considered other ways of contacting the skin?
We have.
Instead of patch, just directly contact to the skin. I assume the electrodes you have on the patch can be replicated on a standalone. I mean, and you don't even need a patch then. Why wouldn't that work?
The reason we landed on the patch was from our interviews with patients, and we interviewed them extensively about form factors, and we figured out anything that constricts, like a blood pressure cuff, is not going to work. These patients are told to minimize constriction early on. Something like a device that you stick on is a little bit more prone to user error versus a patch. You can just stick in the same place the whole time. You can base it on your anatomical landmarks, and that is really what patients have told us they would use. So it's based on those interviews. Thank you. Thank you for your questions. This was fun, yeah.
All right, thanks, Ian. Well, good morning. I'm Amy Hopper, and I'm CEO of Horizon Health Solutions. I'm joined today by my co-founder, Dr. John Sherrill. Horizon is a pharmacy SaaS company that's protecting patient access to care by keeping their local pharmacy in business. Just like food deserts, pharmacy deserts in the United States are growing. Since 2008, 1 in 8 of our community pharmacies have closed, and that trend continues. If it does continue on, over 100 million Americans run the risk of losing convenient access to their medication. Pharmacists add a very human element to healthcare. Some of these communities don't have a physician, but they have a pharmacist. And that pharmacist can prescribe some medications, they provide vaccinations, and they also answer questions about general health concerns. So for an example that's a little bit closer to home in Oregon, you may know that Bi-Mart recently closed their pharmacy locations and sold those prescriptions to Walgreens and Rite Aid, which is owned by Walgreens. So this next slide shows the 60 locations that Bi-Mart had pharmacies in, and the 6 that I've circled don't have a Walgreens or Rite Aid to transfer those prescriptions to. Now, luckily, these communities still have independent pharmacies, but they're struggling from the same things that Bi-Mart does and may eventually close as well. And the 2 that will have the biggest issue are Brookings down here and Madras up top. Their community will have an hour-long commute to medication by car and 2 hours by bus. No pharmacy nearby would mean having to make that commute of an hour or 2 hours just because your child has an ear infection and needs antibiotics. Or it means panicking when your dad's insulin is delayed in the mail.
So our CTO is Brett Bailey. Pharmacist. He works at a community pharmacy and a hospital pharmacy. Brett began to suspect that the pharmacies were actually missing out on additional revenue from the insurance companies. Now, Brett's also a clinical informatics fellow, so he was able to design an algorithm to help confirm his suspicions, and that's what he did. So over the last year, Brett and I have been working on the development of our first product, PriceView, that is the original algorithm that we are developing to bring to market to help pharmacies maximize their margins. The problem that Brett actually identified was that the pharmacies were using a cost-plus pricing system. So we're using the average wholesale drug price and adding an arbitrary markup. It's usually about 20%. And then they're sending that as the reimbursement request to the insurance company. The insurance company may set a higher ceiling or higher market price. Now, they don't communicate that to the pharmacies. But if you're CVS or Walgreens, well, CVS owns an insurance company, so they have some market insight as well. But all of those guys also have teams of people that are dedicated to making sure their pharmacies get the market price from whatever insurance payer there is. Of course, the mom and pop shops, the community pharmacies, the independent pharmacies don't have this, right? And so that is where PriceView comes in, and that's where we are making a difference for those pharmacies. Now, it's the algorithms and the database that make PriceView so powerful. We're using a proprietary algorithm to identify which prescriptions have been underbilled to the insurance company and helping informing those pharmacies of how to get the market price. We're using more than 5 years of pricing data and a network effect to help inform those pricing recommendations, But how do we know that it works, right? That's important. Well, it made one hospital pharmacy $800,000 of additional profit last year alone. Right? So we know that, yeah, it does work. Now, PriceView offers pricing transparency to the community and hospital pharmacies, right? So this is the independent pharmacies that don't benefit from those vertical integration. Now, it allows them to bill correctly and maximize their margins without adding to the copay of their patients. However, and it allows the pharmacists to spend more time with their patients and less time focused on their bottom line, which is why they became pharmacists in the first place. Now, here's a real-world example of how PriceView made a pharmacy additional profit. Originally, the pharmacy was going to bill $185.74, but PriceView said you're missing the market price and recommended a higher one. Eventually, the pharmacy received $195.96 from the insurance company. You can see the copay for the patient stayed the same. However, the pharmacy was able to collect an additional $10.22 on this one fill of the prescription. You can see here, this is the... Yes, sir.
Where are you getting the data for this?
So we're getting the data from the pharmacy, from the pharmacies that are in our network. So right now it's the hospital pharmacy. We're able to see what other prices have been billed over time, and we're able to inform those. So we have 5 years.
Within that pharmacy, you're able to see what it's been billing out, or are they able to reach out into other I didn't understand this part.
Yeah, as the network grows, that's the network effect that we're going to be able to really take advantage of. We have a small network right now, but we're building, and that's the important part. That's why we're going to try to grow, and we'll talk about how we're going to take advantage or try to grow more.
Getting those other pharmacies then to feed information in as part of how you're doing this.
Right, and using 5 years of historical data to be able to predict what they're going to do. And even without a massive network effect, we've already made the hospital $800,000 of additional revenue or additional profit.
Keep driving on this. 5 years of historical data came from
this is that university's data. Yeah, so their pharmacy data.
Got
it.
it.
So it's one pharmacy, one set of data for 5 years.
Yeah, except for there are national pricing indexes that we can also gather over time, and then we're using those as well. Yeah, sorry,
You're feeding in some other sources.
Right.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's not just one. Yeah, it's not just the pharmacy data. There's some national data that's available as well, and then also using the pharmacy's data.
But again, where you want to get it, you say network effects is multiple pharmacies feeding their data in as part of this service.
Exactly. And Greg, if I might add, we have started some pilot programs with community pharmacies who have started to send us de-identified data. So we're already working to build that.
Okay. I will just say, reading through the plan, this was not clear.
That's good feedback.
To me, I would get a little bit more in on that.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can follow up on this one, exactly my sentiment. Let me understand the example. So this particular pharmacy is saying this drug is worth of $185, and then your software lets them know that no, actually market price is higher by $10. That's what you're doing. Why are they getting their price wrong?
So they're using the formula that we showed in the beginning, right? So they're using that formula based on an average wholesale drug price. The insurance company can set a different ceiling. Because they have their own reasons that they may set a different ceiling. So if you don't know, because they don't communicate it to the pharmacies, right? If you're going to bill us less money, then we're going to pay you less money, right? That works out for the insurance company. But when you're an insurance company that also owns a CVS pharmacy, because that's how that works, it may benefit you if you were just CVS, because only CVS may know that information.
And I'll give kind of a dumb analogy, but it's like if you were selling your house and you didn't have comparables in your neighborhood, right? So you would just say, okay, I bought it 5 years ago for this price, and I kind of want to make an extra 20%, and that's how you would price your house. Whereas now we have Zillow, Realtor.com, all of these comparables to really make sure you're getting a market price.
And so yeah, this is the pricing, the price chart for this medication over the last year. So you can see how much it varies. And if you're off by, you're using a little old data for that average wholesale drug price, you could miss out on, $30, $40 worth of revenue there.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
So let's say a particular brand of drug, right? Let's just think about one particular drug. And customer comes in, this price is shown, but then your software says $10 higher. And now this pharmacy knows that right price for that drug. So then another customer comes, asking for the same drug. You already know it, right?
Are we only getting paid off of that one transaction?
That's right.
That we're going? Okay, yeah. So what we're able to do based on the initial setup, we know what their equation is. So even as average wholesale drug price, even if it's not the next person, if it's next week and the average wholesale drug price has changed, we know what their base would have been, what they would have charged, and what they are now making. That delta is what we are collecting 20% on. We already tracked that information.
And we're
so
locking
in
that.
The system. Yeah,
we're locking that price, that pricing
equation.
formula in for the first year.
For the whole first year. So once you identify a gap, you're getting that delta from every customer that comes in.
Yes.
For a year.
Yes.
Okay. That's good to know.
That's a great, yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay. So we know that it works, but does anybody want it?
As I mentioned, we've started some pilot programs with community pharmacies. And so we've plugged in with one of a network of 13 in our home state of Arkansas. And then we also, just a couple of weeks ago, a blurb came out about us participating in these competitions. And a local pharmacist reached out directly to us asking about his 2 pharmacy locations, how we can work together. We also are in early talks with the largest health system in Arkansas, which is Baptist Health. They have a big retail pharmacy and we're working with them on how we can move forward. And we've gotten permission from their executives to share that information.
So just another question. The local smaller pharmacy, what's your prognosis? Because the one I've been hearing for a decade is they will continue to be pushed out of the market.
I think that's unless they have, something to disrupt that. So right now they operate, as John mentioned, on margins that range from 3 to 5%. At UAMS, we raised that by an entire 1%. I mean, that's a transformational change for a pharmacist. That would be $30,000 for them over the year. I mean, that can help keep them in business. And then the products that we're going to share with you that we have in the pipeline will increase that even further.
It gives them the tools that the big guys already have. The reason they're dying is because they're fighting with one hand tied behind their back. So we're giving them the tools so that they can compete on a similar level.
Right, yeah. And also, and you know this mainly through friends and some other things, it's been a technology grind on this. And again, I look at pharmacies now as commodity producers. They keep pushing more technology in to bring their labor costs down. And if you've got scale, scale matters. So
yeah, that's definitely true. No, I totally agree. And I think what's special about what we're doing is, we're adding to their top line, and that flows directly to the bottom line. There's no additional labor. As we'll show soon, that it's one click, truly, where we're popping up on their screen and just getting them more margin. So we're trying to eliminate the need because they are like 1- and 2-man shops. I mean, they're very small operations. We need to make it as seamless as possible for them to continue.
Yeah. And then again, I would say my wife and I use one, a local, for that very reason. Just want to give them the business.
Exactly. Right. Well, I think, we're talking about Starbucks, right? They came in and we thought it would be the death of small community coffee shops. And it hasn't been, right? People care about community. And we're seeing that in Oregon, right? I mean, now people are still looking for those independent pharmacies. We have an article at the very end of our slide deck about how people are waiting in line and having to eat their dinner in line to get their medication.
Well, and also, there's a geographical constraint because you're just not going to get a Walmart or a CVS in small towns. So
exactly, it's not profitable.
The big risk would be mail delivery. That would be the big risk. But
right, and I think as we've seen, we're very reliant on the supply chain, and when there's any kind of disruption, we're in trouble. So protecting that access to care, this is all part of that.
And when you need antibiotics, they can't come through the mail in 2 days, right?
True.
When your kid's got an ear infection and they're screaming in pain, that sucks. Yeah. And you're not going to wait 2 days. And if, you're not going to send opiates through the mail either. So there are some things that have to be like that.
Right. As CEO, I have 4 years of corporate finance experience, and I ran a regional startup accelerator. I also sit on the board of a statewide angel investment network called the Archangel Alliance.
And my name is Dr. John Sherrill. I'm a postdoctoral fellow in health sciences, innovation, and entrepreneurship, and I work with the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences Institute for Digital Health and Innovation on this product, PriceView, and our other products that are in the pipeline.
Our teammate Solomon Isu is about to become Dr. Solomon Isu in the next hour or so as he defends his dissertation. He has 3 years experience on a tech startup, and he also sold a SaaS product in 2016.
John Walker is a serial entrepreneur with a successful exit. He currently is the managing member of a digital sales and marketing company that specializes in solar.
And Dr. Brett Bailey, as John has already introduced, is our fractional CTO, and he created PriceView. He provides both the community pharmacist insight as well as hospital pharmacist insight, but he's a data analyst and also clinical informaticist.
So while we have a great team, and I'm lucky to get to work with Amy and the guys back home, we are aware that we can learn from the experience of others. And so just kind of to point out a couple people on our advisory board, Dr. Amy Hester took a university software technology from the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences and has successfully spun it out into a business and is selling it in hundreds of hospitals across the country. So we have that model that we can follow. And there's Dr. Brittany Marsh, who owns a community pharmacy in Arkansas. She's acutely aware of the difficulties of operating a pharmacy on such small margins when you don't have the same tools that everybody else already has. And of course, how could our board be complete without a member of the customer segment that we're trying to serve, right? So PriceView is a software add-on product. It'll plug into the most commonly used pharmacy management system. So at hospitals, that's Epic, and at community pharmacies, that's Pioneer RX. So here you can see, this is in the background, the normal pharmacy management system. The pharmacy management system that the pharmacy already has. They're not having to switch. And the only time they're going to see price view pop up is when they're submitting a reimbursement request that's below the market value. So you have a pop-up that says, would you like to increase it to the market value? It's a one-click solution, and it changes it directly into their system. Now, our business model is a profit share model. So for every additional dollar that we make a pharmacy, we're going to take 20 cents of that. The reason that we're doing this is because from our customer discovery interviews, we know that the pharmacies, because they operate on those tiny 3 to 5% margins, they're really hesitant to take on upfront costs. That are those large upfront costs that are usually associated with software. So this would allow them to take on a new software that integrates already into their system without all of that upfront cost, and that we can start making them money on day one, making us money on day one, and allowing us to capture the data that's so important to that network effect that we talked about, and to the development of our other products that are in our pipeline. And that market penetration is so important for a SaaS product to be successful. Based on our early success at UAMS, we think that we will have an average annual earnings at hospital pharmacies of $200,000 and $6,000 at community pharmacies.
Now,
yes, sir.
Is this any way dependent on how insurance company will react to these price changes? Would they deny, for example, the claim?
So they set a ceiling, and so they're just going to see that the pharmacy is hitting their ceiling. Okay. We'll talk about.
And is that ceiling non-discriminatory, depending on who does? Like, will they treat these small pharmacies at equal footing as the Walgreens, for example?
Yes, yes, sir. So, and we'll talk about a way that some pharmacies do get in trouble with insurance companies here in a minute with their pricing models.
There are 44,000 pharmacies in the United States, and we are specifically targeting the 23,000 community and 342 hospital pharmacies that are indeed independent, and they don't have that vertical integration or price transparency that the big guys have. For our first couple of years in business, we're going to target the southeast region of the U.S., which is where we are in Arkansas, and we make up about 40% of the market for pharmaceutical drugs. This is 10,000 community and 100 hospital pharmacies. And I want to be clear that PriceView, we consider our foot in the door product. It will lead us to the big data play that will inform several other products that we have on the horizon that John will share shortly. We're focused this year on beta testing. So right now we're in UAMS. We are plugged into their pharmacy management system of Epic, and we're starting to generate revenue for them. We want to bring on Baptist Health. That'll be our second beta tester. We have good relationships there. We feel like it's friendly. And then next year, we're going to continue to work with this early adopter that we see as hospitals, because we want to get a large amount of data that we can leverage and use to benefit our community pharmacies. We're going to use a direct sales model for that, and we plan to make about $500,000 next year in revenue. After that, we will start expanding into community pharmacies. What we're going to do is use a hub and spoke model. Based on our customer discovery, we understand that a lot of these community pharmacy owners are part of their state's pharmacy associations, and they're actively engaged. So we're going to do the same and plan to market out that way. And we'll also employ a referral program. So if community pharmacy owners talk to their friend and they get them on board, they'll get a slight discount in the amount of cut we're taking from their additional profits. In 2025, we'll do our national rollout to the 23,000 community pharmacies around the country, and we're targeting $17 million in annual revenue.
Amy, just a question. So I'm just thinking Arkansas. You go in and get the hospitals you want to go after. Does that give you enough data volume coming in that you feel like you're where you need to be in the state or the region?
Yes. So it will still improve as we add more community pharmacies.
It always will,
But those big data dumps, we saw like how much bigger the contracts are for a hospital pharmacy compared to a community pharmacy. We're talking about a huge amount of data that we're able to collect from a hospital pharmacy that's going to help inform that network, and that's why we're going after those big contracts first. It's a much smaller part of the market overall, but it allows us to make a good amount of money. It's the data that's so important, that a large amount of data.
And UAMS right now, they do on average $100 million in annual revenue compared to a community pharmacy, which is about $3 million.
Yes. So how well do the hospitals understand the value of their data that they're giving you? And are you concerned about that at all?
Most of them do not understand the value of the data, it seems like. But what we're doing, by providing, I mean, we made UAMS $800,000 of additional revenue last year. They're happy to share that data with that amount of money coming into the hospital.
So you're equating the savings as their revenue for sharing that data, basically, is what the way it can be presented, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and it truly is bottom line.
Yeah.
And they're not losing their data. They still have, of course, the access to it.
Right. But it will be de-identified.
Okay.
We've learned from our customer discovery that pharmacies are working in several ways to maximize their reimbursement, but they are not optimal. So on the left side, we have gross overbilling, and that was the process that John was talking about. Insurance companies see this as fraudulent, so it's not happening as often. It's very unsophisticated. But it also hurts that cash-paying customer, which is about 9% of the people that walk into the pharmacy. Although most of them, hopefully are using those discount cards like GoodRx. The second is a company called Omnisis. They are an entirely different pharmacy management system. So we've talked about Pioneer, which holds the largest market share. These community pharmacies would have to completely switch over their pharmacy system to take advantage of Profit Max, which is their similar product offering that we have. The next is pharmacy switches. They are these third-party transaction intermediaries, basically a black box. A pharmacy will say, here's all my transactions, go fix them magically, and then the pharmacy switch charges them a high transaction fee, and they do that whether or not they make the pharmacy money. So we have very low switching costs because we're a software add-on. We're going to integrate into the software that these community pharmacies are already using. And in fact, I just learned last week in Wewoka, Oklahoma, a town of 3,000 people, they are using a pharmacy management system. So we were worried about that. Are these tiny places with maybe, someone who's about to retire using these software systems? And they are. And then we also, of course, our profit sharing model that we are definitely going to employ for at least the first year that we're in business will make those barriers to getting on board with these pharmacies low.
So we've talked a lot about PriceView and how it solves a customer-validated problem and how we're going to get it to market. We have other products on our horizon, as Amy mentioned. The next on the horizon is our acquisition cost prediction algorithm. Say that 3 times fast. But we're using machine learning and nearly 10 years of data to help inform our customer pharmacies of when their cost of medications are going to change so they can adjust how they buy medications so they can further maximize margins. And the next on the horizon is our generic drug match program. This informs the pharmacy of which generic drug manufacturer offers them the best margin based on a host of factors that are specific to each individual pharmacy and the patients that they serve. Now, it goes well beyond just that what is the cheapest price, right? So you can look at our products like this. The cost acquisition is your buy low. Your price used to sell high to the insurance company, and your generic drug match is what you should be buying and selling. So it's a holistic approach that allows the pharmacies to capture those market inefficiencies that the big guys are already doing. It allows them to compete. It allows them to stay in business. It allows them to continue to serve the communities that they love. And the people in those communities can benefit from a higher level of health.
We're raising a $500,000 seed round at a nearly $3 million pre-money valuation. And we're going to use those funds to onboard a VP of engineering so that we can integrate into Pioneer and start serving these community pharmacies. We also want to make sure that we incorporate HIPAA-compliant cybersecurity and infrastructure, because even though we don't plan to hold any patient data, we need to be prepared in case there is a breach. And that's not only to protect patients and the pharmacies we serve, but ourselves as well. Our planned exit strategy is an acquisition by one of the pharmaceutical software companies that we've mentioned, like Epic or Pioneer. Our valuation at our exit will be 13 times our EBITDA, and our seed investor ROI based on that valuation will be 51x. We also think that some of the products that we have in the pipeline will be attractive to GPOs as well as PSAOs. So with that, we want your help avoiding this looming health crisis in America. And we really appreciate your time, and we'll take any questions that you might have.
Good job, you guys.
Thank you.
I have some questions. Go. So tell me your plan for pharmacy onboarding.
Yeah, so through this hub and spoke model, we want this community of pharmacy owners to talk to each other, spread the word about how we can help make them more money. Mm-hmm. We are working to automate our solution in a way that it will be a one-click offering. So Right now, the pilot process, we are helping them build the right ways to pull the data we need. And right now we're showing them, hey, here's what we could have made you had you been using PriceView. So right now we're still working to automate that so we can seamlessly integrate into Pioneer.
Are you going to charge pharmacies for onboarding? How is that going to work?
No. The upfront cost will be their time. I mean, I think it's silly to say there's no upfront cost. It will be us working with them, but we're going to get it into a place where it can happen much faster.
Mm-hmm. Well, so one bit of advice I would offer is, I have a IT services and cybersecurity company. It's going to be harder than you think to onboard these small pharmacies, okay? It's going to be hard. And I would either charge them up front for it or improve your margin if they want to have you absorb that cost. It's going to be hard to onboard them. You're going to have tech illiterate people who have small town IT support and don't know what's going on. And you're going to end up having your techs or whoever's in charge of this spending days trying to get pharmacies up and going. And then I didn't see anything about the ongoing tech support. You're selling a software product. You're going to need to build in a plan for a full back-of-house team to support this product when all those questions roll in. Because as soon as that goes down, they're not making money, you're not making money on the solution.
Right.
So,
and that is baked, the cost is baked into our cost of goods sold, but I think we do need to build out more of a robust plan around that.
Yeah, okay. And then finally, I would say integration. We just went through a Salesforce integration we integrated 4 other products into Salesforce for my company. It's challenging, and you often have to put middleware in the middle. I know you have a VP you're going to bring on their position is to figure that out. Mm-hmm. But I would just really work on the actual operational side of running a software business and make sure that's part of the plan.
Great. Would it be okay if we follow up with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
To learn more?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm going to come back and echo. I think that's an excellent idea to charge them.
Okay.
For it. And in particular, once you get to a scale on the data where you can demonstrate you've got the value, to me, this is qualifying people in a sales process. I want to know that you're willing to pay me something to come in. Otherwise, you will waste a lot of my time. Qualify.
Yeah, no, that's great.
And a check does that.
We've gone back and forth on a traditional subscription SaaS model. And I think that's something that after the first year, once we have demonstrated that value, we'll be more easily able to move to that kind of revenue model, which is something that we can count on for revenue.
And that's where Josh, who's not here obviously, really comes in. That's what he does for his digital sales and marketing. That's qualifying customers before they ever send anybody out.
Yeah. That's good feedback. Thank you.
Hey, just a perspective for you here. It's not about the business, but maybe just something that you might be speaking to as you engage investors is your customer base is the pharmacists, the pharmacy owners and the independent pharmacy businesses, right? Typically, the communities they serve are usually comprised of underrepresented population of our country.
Definitely.
Lowest healthcare coverage, lowest access to quality foods, all of those things. I mean, the business model points to these are the folks that are in what I'll say is, you heard the whole phrase about the food deserts, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is the healthcare and pharmaceutical deserts where they've got to drive an hour to get to it.
Exactly.
Same kind of thing. So this is the underrepresented community. You might want to mention that in terms of how this might benefit that population, because if those pharmacy networks can remain in those communities, then maybe it prevents somebody from having to drive an hour.
Exactly. That is our mission completely.
And I think it would be great for you to say that in terms of your recognition, because I'm thinking of somewhere in eastern North Carolina, or that zone between Charlotte and Atlanta where you've got, just nothing but truck stops, right?
Right.
Those kinds of areas, or, if I go to, where you guys are based in Arkansas, you go outside of Fayetteville and Bentonville, where's the next town, right?
Exactly, yeah. Arkansas is a very rural state.
Yeah, so if that might be something that you may consider, because, being a technology platform, we're sort of talking about where areas where like, hey, getting somebody to integrate your platform is like sending a new iPad to your grandparents, that kind of a thing. That's the same type of experience. So, but you may want to just incorporate that in terms of the end beneficiary of the pharmacy is the community.
It's kind of a mission pivot.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just, maybe
Just clarify, because that is the mission. You guys have hit it.
Yeah.
We're just not saying it
correct
as much. Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
I
that's
didn't
awesome.
hear
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
I didn't hear that from you guys in terms of I know where you're going with this,
Right.
but tell me that that's the community that
Okay.
you're serving.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so do you have this discussion in Arkansas? Because the way I know it here is the rural-urban divide
Oh,
in the
absolutely.
state of Oregon.
Mhm.
Do you have that discussion in
Totally.
Arkansas? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
especially.
It's the Bentonville, Fayetteville, it's a college town and Walmart
Yeah, it's
headquarters.
Portland versus
Exactly,
Roseburg, where
exactly.
Yes.
our company is at. There's, yeah.
Bryson, thank you so much. We're out.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thanks. Really appreciate the
Yeah,
feedback.
thank you
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate the
Really
feedback.
appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you
Jim.
guys.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to introduce the judges, Ibrahim Van, Greg Byrne, Jim Chi, and Devin Devies. Today, you're going to have 30 minutes to present to the judges, and they're going to have the privilege to interrupt you at any time to ask you any questions. And with that, I will pass it on to you.
Great. Thank you guys all for coming. Really excited to be here. We are Auto, and we are helping teams outbound better because we believe that every idea deserves to be heard. So today, I'm going to first show you the problem with outbound emails, and it's because people basically take two different perspectives. One is the way that Jordan takes, which is the one on the left, which is Jordan sends massive numbers of emails out, doesn't really personalize them, really just focuses on spray and pray and just, here's what I have, this is my value prop, and hopefully someone will be interested enough to buy it. Jamie, on the other hand, focuses on exactly what the person that she is selling to cares about, thinks about how what they do, what they've done in the past is relevant to the thing that she's selling and how she can help her end customer, right? And this gets borne out in the response rates and the times that it takes. For Jordan, it takes very little time to send out each message, but the response rate is very low, less than 1%. For Jamie, she can get a response rate up to 10%, but the emails can take 10, 15 minutes to write, to find the information, personalize each one, set up the sequence. And really, at the end of the day, neither of these are working. Neither team is hitting their pipeline goals. 83% of sales teams are missing their pipeline generation goals in the United States today. And that's what we really want to solve at Auto. How can we take the speed of the speed of Jordan with the effectiveness of Jamie? And that's what we've built.
And that is how we have chosen to structure the platform that we are building. Keeping in mind one of our customers, Naren, as we walk through this, the first step of our process would be to onboard a customer and just get to know them. Very classic onboarding steps. But there's also the automated element of that too, which is where our platform comes in for enablement. We're bringing in every piece of publicly available information and data on our customer to form some form of profile on them. You can imagine we would pull in from LinkedIn, maybe Google News, Twitter, some new job postings, really anything we can get our hands on. And then after that, we synthesize it and figure out what's the most important information about that person. And then they would give us a list of prospects for who they want to be reaching out to on a weekly basis. And we replicate that exact same process automatically. We go through everyone on the prospect list and create a profile for them. Any information we can get about them online, articles they've written, what have you. Now that we have these two competing profiles, our customer and then the profile of everyone who they want to reach out to, that's really where the natural language processing comes in. That's where we extract value. And if you would imagine two circles, like a Venn diagram overlapping, it's the areas of overlap which is where we can really find value. That's what we have in common. And each of us are going to have something different in common. But it's that area of overlap that once we identify that and bring that into email copy, that's when we can start to form connections. So this would be an example of an email that we can generate through Auto. At the very top, you see us congratulating Bill on an exciting development in his career. This is something that we found through Google News. Right after that, we're expressing an understanding of what he does in his professional career. We brought that information from LinkedIn. The next one, well, that's just traditional generic content and letting him know who we are, what Televi does. And then that fourth one, we actually brought that in from their marketing site. So we can scrape their information and get an understanding of who the prospect is and why that matters for the business that our customer is selling them to. And the reason why this matters is that we are able to get the two elements that were great from Jordan and Jamie, the speed and the effectiveness. So our goal for Naren and all of our customers is that 10% response rate, but only taking a second to send. So sticking with Televi, we ran a case study for them in seeing how effective were we really. And we were able to get an 11.2% response rate generating emails through Auto for our customer, which is up from just 4.4% before they were engaged with us. And even though it's not the 10-second goal that we're looking for, we were able to generate every single email and send them out within 27 seconds. Now, this is an example of using our product for us, right? We've been using Auto for outbounding and generating new customers and actually building our own pipeline for new customers. And in the case that we just ran with, we sent out 83 emails that were auto-generated through our system, and we were able to book 11 meetings from those 83 emails sent out. And I think we were a little more careful with this one, so the number, the seconds went up, but that was just human in the loop, making sure that we were not letting anything slip.
So you're using yourself to test yourself.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, free outbound. And I think, often it's a little hard to understand, okay, you're going to pull this information about other people. What does that mean? Well, let's talk about the people who are here in this room. Ibrahim, if I'm reaching out to you, I might talk about the HBR article you posted about seeing the world in a different way. Thinking about maybe the core class that you took 2 years ago and how I also took a core class from HBS and understanding what does this virtual education world look like, right? That builds connection between us. Devin, for you, a business development role that you've posted online that you're trying to hire and figuring out how to better empower businesses through the power of technology, something that clearly we're also very passionate about, and talking about how our intersection of interests matters. Jim, your love of golf, I played last weekend. I was on Team USA as part of the fencing team. Those are things that matter not just to me, not just to you, but to us, right? And that creates authenticity at scale, which is really the underpinnings of the technology that we're building here. And if the question is, what is authenticity at scale worth? What does it matter if I message Jim about the game of golf he played last weekend? Well, it's a massive market opportunity.
So stop for just a second. Can I take the fact that I'm up there, not up there, as I'm doing my job effectively?
It was very hard to find information about you. Yeah.
I am very, good.
This is the guy you have to convince.
Oh, no. I'm going to get forced into social media now, but sorry for the interruption.
Understand, Greg, that Ibrahim and I paid exorbitant amount of money to get recognized on social media.
And I do my best to stay away.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So moving on.
Let's go.
Massive opportunity. We're basically sitting at the intersection between two really interesting markets, productivity management and sales enablement. Both of these massive, $40 billion, growing 13% per year. But the intersection point really doesn't have that much, especially within the AI and ML components. We see an opportunity just for the product that we have out today at about a $2.1 billion market, growing internationally to 6.3, and then eventually as we add in direct-to-consumer B2C email marketing and building those connections between brands and individuals at almost a $20 billion market opportunity.
The market opportunity doesn't mean much if we're not actually adding value. So let's talk about our company. Right now, we are focusing on one specific use case. At this point in time, we're a feature, right? We help sales reps and organizations become more efficient, generate better pipeline, and basically have better content that we are generating for our customers. But the underlying technology that we've built will immediately go into servicing other needs, creating more of a holistic product for sales representatives. Being able to use the technology to find better leads for our customers, the way a lead gen agency would, but using that in an automated fashion and extracting real content, not just going through a lead list. And then once that lead list is actually developed, providing our customers with educational resources based on all the information we were able to bring in to empower them so that when they actually do book those meetings and get on and have conversations, they are ready to have intelligent conversations with the people who are now in their pipeline. And as far as traction goes, so far we're doing pretty well. We have a 500 company waitlist, people who are excited about the platform that we are trying to build. We have launched with 10 paid pilots. A great example is an e-commerce supporter. It's called Global Source. They basically work with e-com companies to help source their raw materials cheaper. Great company. They pay us $1,000 per month plus $100 for every meeting that we book for them. So that'd be a qualified lead. And we've been able to raise $200,000 from angel investors just to get us to where we are today.
We have a fantastic team. Josh, unfortunately, couldn't be here today because of COVID, but he is a outbound sales expert. He's been in the space for 8 years, most recently running a team of 15 at Celonis. which is a automation company, and helped grow from their Series B to a Series D before leaving to start Otto. Holden is an engineer by trade, just finished his master's in machine learning and data science from the University of Virginia, and actually wrote his senior honors thesis on deep learning models, of papers that have come out within the past couple months, really like the frontier of machine learning and natural language processing. And I'm Sam. I just finished my MBA at Harvard, and my background is in product management and pricing, behavioral economics, really, understanding what causes people to convert through different funnels. And we also have an all-star team of advisors along with that. Tim O'Leary is considered the godfather of direct mail marketing, where he did it both at Aquifer and at at Epsilon, where he was sending over 1 billion direct mail marketing messages with over 10,000 different personalizations a month for American Express. Mike Anderson is an experienced CTO and AI thought leader who is helping us develop our technology further. And Lynn Rothman, who is a chief business officer and helped scale Penumbra from 50 employees to over 3,500. So with this team of advisors, this all-star team of employees and founders, we're really excited for how we can help create authenticity at scale and help businesses get their voice out. So thank you.
All right. Go ahead.
So how does the intersection of the client list and the customization work? Where does the client list come from?
So the client list currently, half of our customers are just giving it to us. So if you're more of an established organization, you probably already have some basic sales org, just standards, right? Maybe you already are generating your own lead list. Who cares? They're giving those to us. But there's also a pretty fair amount of companies who are new to sales. Maybe they're seed, even Series A, and trying to build that sales organization. And that's where the lead list generation comes in using some of the insights that are really gleaned from understanding who our customer is and then looking out into who might be a good match. And that's where the deep learning and actually getting an understanding of context matching comes into play.
What about Zoom Info is a local player. Yeah. How do they intersect with what you're doing here?
Right. So we also use a competitor of Zoom Info called Apollo to pull email addresses and things like that.
Got it. You'll use that. So you guys will have a licensing agreement with them.
Right. Yeah. We already do. Got it. So that's where we'll pull information from as well.
Okay. How much of the client database that you draw from is a customer CRM versus Apollo, and how does that work?
It's dependent on the customer. So for one of our customers, TruePlan, they have already put together, they have Zoom Info, they've put together a 30,000 person lead list that they haven't really gone after yet. And so we just take part of that lead list and run Auto as our experimentation. But for Global Source, they've never done any outbound at all. And so we're creating their lead list with them using the ICP constraints that they've set out.
Okay. And you will integrate either way? I didn't see a lot about how the pricing model will work and relative to onboarding and all that kind of stuff.
So maybe I'll say the integration piece, and you can talk about the pricing for that different model. Right now, we're taking customers that we can get because it's all learning for us, right? But we're really going to be able to provide value at scale. So not just in the model that we're doing now, which is human in the loop, making sure that we're helping our customers grow, but just true SaaS model. You come on, sign up, that's it. We're going to have to integrate with basically any CRM that a sales organization is using. So we've already started building out an integration for that using a technology called an iPaaS solution. And basically through this provider, it's called Tray, we get access to every CRM. And they basically act as the API that allows for our emails to travel through into whatever CRM they use. And so we understand that right now, it's not the same integration tactic that we're going to take in 6 months, but we're already setting up for the understanding that we're going to have to integrate with everyone. And then for pricing.
Yeah, so we've gone for much more of a human in the loop solution as our initial model, which functions more as us being a lead gen agency for these companies. Long term, we have the ability to set this up as a specific SaaS product that integrates into your HubSpot, integrates into your ZoomInfo, into your Apollo, whatever have you, so that we sit in between those two layers, and you pull your leads in through ZoomInfo. We tell you which are the highest quality ones. We give you exactly the content that you send out. You send it out through HubSpot, and your salesperson can save, hours out of their day every day, and then additionally can get a higher response rate than they would have gotten by writing the messages themselves.
For a couple things. Well, I would mention Apollo in this because that's pretty important. That's where that's actually the core database is the client list that you're offering, right? For most of your clients.
So Apollo is really like where we get the email and then also tie it to a LinkedIn, which we use as a unique identifier to then pull in things like articles that person's featured in or things about their company.
Sure. Or social. Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's like, it's the starting point for us from which we jump off of there. Really good for having clean data. And so if we start with an Apollo list of email and LinkedIn, that's all I need, and that's actually all we use from Apollo. Because from there, I've built all of these different scrapers and integrations into various APIs to bring in all of this great data online, on that person.
But the pricing model couldn't be the same if you're offering Apollo and basically passing that through to your clients versus doing complex integration with, like, I assume that Trey is like a Jitterbit kind of solution. I
don't know what Jitterbit is.
Well, just an API integration tool.
Okay.
Which we use Jitterbit. It's expensive and it's complicated. It works really well, but it's expensive and complicated. There's cybersecurity concerns. There's all sorts of other things.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm just wondering, that wasn't really fleshed out of how is this. That's a different value out of like, hey, you don't even have a customer base. We'll both provide you a customer base and tell you how to communicate with them versus a company that says, I have a customer base, I just want to communicate with them better. Those are two very different products and different value propositions.
Yeah.
I didn't see a lot in the plan that relayed that.
And I think that's fair. Like right now, we're at a point right now where we're trying to figure out what works given our constraints. Data is a huge constraint when you're building a deep learning model. So having a different approach, which is the human in the loop, allows us to grow organically, right? But thinking about where we need to be, none of us really have much experience in pricing out models like that. And so to answer your question, we don't have it in here because it's not something we've been able to test yet. So hopefully we'll be able to rely on our advisors. We'll probably go with what is industry standard, looking at our competitors. But it's a fair point. We need to look into it. But as of right now, we just don't know what that pricing is going to look like.
Okay, so let me understand how this might work with something Devin was thinking about, and you've just driven me deeper there. So say you have a 30-plus store pizza restaurant chain,
right,
and an e-club membership of a couple $100,000. Can you use what you're developing to tailor messages going out to that customer base with offers?
So this would be for a B2C, like
the B2C play. Yeah.
How can I sell more pizza?
Yes.
Yeah.
Eventually, yes.
But that's not where you.
So this is my dream. Honestly, this is like what fascinated me about.
So you can get my
this
interest
in
now on this.
So I'll take this one because this is where I think like we need to be as an industry. There's so much data on people that's just underutilized, especially in the B2C space, right? You get so many emails from companies that you probably shop at and respect, but the content you get from them is garbage, right? It doesn't relate to you at all. And this technology that we're building addresses that directly. We've chosen strategically to start with sales because it's what our founding team knows, and we think that we can really provide value quickly. But ultimately, when we talk about taking from a feature to a product to a large organization, this is the thing that motivates me, is getting to that point where we're really addressing those types of data problems.
Which is especially interesting because during the pandemic, Holden actually started a pizza restaurant out of his apartment. So he's not only from the B2C marketing, but also from specifically pizza.
It's very relevant to me. Yes.
All right.
Was there an ask in there? Did I miss it?
Oh,
yeah, I didn't see it either.
Yeah, we have it at the end. Sorry. We weren't sure. Okay. These are we have a little bit of money, we have some runway, and these are kind of the projects that we're building out. So like the tray stuff is part of the integrations, building out enterprise features. This is kind of the scope of our next couple projects and how much each of them will cost.
And you're asking for just $20,000 total, or?
Okay.
Slide before that.
Maybe okay. So there's.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry. There's the new venture competition prize, and then there's like what we're raising.
Yes.
So this is what we're raising and what we're using the money for.
Want to talk through that one?
Yeah. So basically, we have an idea of a couple more engineering roles that we want to hire out that will be into the salary bucket. Most of the sales and marketing expenses are us starting to run paid ads. Like, obviously, the core of our business will always be the outbound sales function, but there's an importance of having multi-touch campaigns and not just relying on like one touch point and one channel. So having that budget to be able to like create events, to create content that we can use in different ways to get people's attention. That's where our sales and marketing goes. And then SG&A and CapEx is just traditional things that cost money.
So when you say salary, that's really engineering costs.
It's engineering
Most of
costs
it.
almost entirely because we do want to build this platform, and that requires senior engineers, and we're just going to have to bring that on. Yeah.
I would also like to pay myself at some point. But that's
yes, eventually that'll be nice.
Well, so kind of the core of all this is how the model structured to create value and scale. And so that's one thing I'm just missing from the presentation is, and maybe it just relates back in my simple mind just to like just a pricing model is somewhat absent here. I realize you guys are still kind of working out. But it's saying like, hey, we charge this core cost plus this incremental cost, and we have this many clients, and then here's how we scale that. And I guess I'm just missing that in the presentation.
Right. I feel like we might have gotten confused about like the information that was passed along because like we submitted like our whole business plan and then.
We read it. Yes,
okay, cool.
We've all read it.
Okay, cool. Right. So like the scale of like the pricing model of the model that you're talking about, and there's kind of two separate businesses here. So to explain that, it's like one is we are almost like functioning as an outsourced lead gen agency where we charge an upfront cost plus a per lead cost, which is much more of like a value-based pricing model. And then there's one which is like a self-service product that we want to build, which we think will have a lot greater scale, but slightly lower margins because it's just, like you said, there's the integration costs, there's just the fact that we don't create as much value. And so that is like kind of this expansion of the ability for us to serve our customers using that self-service per seat model, which will be more for like enterprise users. The product that we've developed, we have 10 customers running, is more for like early stage pre-series B companies.
That was 1,000 plus 100 on the kind of.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you would just monitor that traffic and see who replies, and if someone replies with interest, that's $100.
Yeah. So we like both have access to the CRM, and then it's all tracked through. Yeah, and so like our approach right now works, but for your point is interesting, and like you said that there's lacking in that transitional step into providing value in like a scale model. What, in your opinion, what is missing in that explanation?
Well, I didn't see even a prospective business model there on the scale side. So I saw a reference to one contract you've thus far structured, which was $1,000 and $100, right?
Right.
That could be a business model, but you're saying then we want to eventually make more of an autonomous model where we sell this tool to teams, enterprise teams that we train to then train the AI tool. What's that model? $50 a seat, $100 a seat. Well, who's the competitor? How does that scale? How do you penetrate that market? It sounds like that's the business you're in today is just a transitory business to get you to there. So, is that correct? you want to get, that's the future, is getting to that level.
Right, I think.
Or are you going to run two businesses, basically? One where you always do kind of a lead gen company, and then you're also eventually selling software product. But this forecast says you're going to be there in 3 years, less than 3 years, 2 years, basically. So close that gap in the plan, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Show us how that happens.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I guess that's just bad explanation on our part. The reason why we introduced the global source pricing model is that's how we're operating now. It's 1,000 base plus the value added, where we only know that we're booking meetings for them because we're in the loop. We have access to their CRM, and that's the part that would be removed. But the general upfront, just we are managing things, that's one of those things that can persist in varying degrees. And so I think this is maybe where we didn't explain things well enough, because that does scale quite well, actually, right? You can have people inbounding in and having this entire suite of services that range from the lead generation that is, again, all automated through our technology, all the way up to just the actual content that's being generated and pushed into their CRM. And that all falls within the $1,000 that we're charging per month. And that's what we would imagine persisting. And then earlier in the talk, you asked, well, what is the specific pricing model for that? And that's where we're not totally sure. We have some ideas, but it's that idea of how to make that base model continue. It's working at 1,000, and people seem very excited, but we also understand that maybe that's not realistic. And so that's where we're trying to bridge the gap between where we're at now and what it's going to be and get some numbers down. It's the numbers specifically that I don't know, but the underlying business model, we actually do have a pretty clear plan on, but clearly didn't explain it well enough for that purpose.
Yeah, I hear that, and I think the big gap is when you see the financials and you say 180 million in 3 years, 2 years. That's a massive step function change in scale. So this model doesn't get you there. So if you want to be there, you want to say by 2030 you want to be at that level. Okay, by 2025 you have that new plan, and it takes 5 years to go. And in the meantime, you just run this model.
Right.
But if you want to be at that future state model by 2025 at that scale, then you better have something figured out really, really soon. Because it's going to take a lot longer than that otherwise. So I think there's just a gap there in terms of the logic.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Okay.
Yeah. I would agree, because reading your business plan, for me, I was really struggling because it was very high level, but I couldn't translate to the numbers then that I was seeing. I think Devin's done a much better job than I'm doing right now of explaining the issue.
No, that's helpful. It is. Yeah. And that's something that we could work out pretty easily, right? That just needs more thought.
I have a similar comment, not just necessarily the numbers, but the business plan, as it written, wants me to believe what you say, rather than actually convince me. To give you a lot of benefit of doubt to be able to know that that's going to happen. It's different than the other business models that we looked at. So without seeing the presentation, just business plans seem like, trust me, we can do it. I don't feel.
So we're definitely not going to win the business plan part.
Well, there's still time.
When you say, how are we doing on time? Can I ask another question? Yeah. So when you say you have to give us benefit of the doubt, where does that bear out specifically, or better question, where could it have been more explanation? Some of the other businesses that you saw where they walked you through it, what was missing in ours?
I think if the presentation came before the business plan,
yeah,
then I wouldn't.
You would have been on board.
Comment that the order is different, therefore, by just looking at the business plan,
not enough.
10 minutes, interesting. Right? Because I don't have enough information.
That's a shame.
And I'll say it the way I would. If I'd just gotten the business plan, this never would have happened. You wouldn't have gotten a call back or a request. There just wasn't enough there that I could understand what it was and how it would work.
Yeah, I think if I want to maybe trying to amplify what Greg's saying, if you just basically were pitching this model right here, showing us how that would scale, and maybe in 3 years it'd be a $15 million business, it would be 180.
No, it'd be about 15. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of what I did in my head.
Yeah.
That would be a much more compelling case.
Yeah.
There's a major gap.
And that's what's missing.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
this,
so fair.
This
Yeah.
matching up to the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is what we're saying. Is just like, you gave
Right.
us this. It's like, okay, this makes sense. But then like, well, wait a minute. How does 176 million?
Yeah.
I love it. This model would be great.
And,
A ton of money.
and I know, and just to, I guess, be upfront, that's one of the weird things about being an entrepreneur, right? Like this is what we understand, right? This model, I could talk about this all day long and get to that point where we convince you that we can get to 15 to 20 million in the next 2 years. But there's also that external pressure or understanding to know that a business should scale. And that's what we try to go through in the numbers. But, bearing out how that transition comes about is difficult to do when you haven't done it.
But being able to say, okay, so guys,
Yeah.
get some coaching. Being able to come in here and say, we can show you a clear path with this for getting to $10 to $15 million in top line revenue in a fairly quick period. Okay, you're going to get my interest.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, and I can understand it, and then you can come in and say, off of that,
right?
Here's, don't bury us too many, but here's kind of 5 different paths that it could take from there to really blow it up.
Yeah, and that's more honest for us too.
Well, yeah,
It's
and
what we're trying to
start in what somebody can see and say, all right, I can see a clear path for how my capital is going in.
Yeah.
And what it's going to develop to, because again, when I saw 170, 180 million, I checked out.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's actually incredibly helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay,
Cool. Guys, a parting thought here is instead of saying salary, you might put that as engineering development.
Okay.
Because to me, that just sounds like, you're buying a really fancy new car.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys so much.
We got signal? Okay. Now I have to read off there because I lost my piece of paper. All right. So our finalists. So out of track number 1, so this is the flat. This was in here. Our finalists are, the first one is Claw Industries from SUNY Binghamton. Congratulations. And our second finalist from this room is Lymphosense from Johns Hopkins. So congratulations to you guys. And so you will be moving on to tomorrow. You will get some schedule information from Amy, and she will help guide you through the process. But you'll be back in here tomorrow morning. From the other track, from the flat classroom or the Peterson room, our first finalist is Beam Commerce from University of Waterloo / Western University, just the Canadians. Just call you the Canadians. And our second and last finalist is also from Canada, Pico Produce. Yes? 5 minutes what? Till Paul's here? All right. What are we going to do for 5 minutes? I don't. We can talk about tomorrow. What should we say about tomorrow? I don't have my schedule with me. Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Sorry. I don't know where my papers went. I got like none of my papers. All right. So tomorrow at 9 o'clock, we will have the final presentations. And do we have an order for tomorrow?
Yes. It'll be 9 a.m. Beam Commerce, and then 9:35 Kickoff, 10:15 Pico, and 10:50 Lymphosense.
Got that? So can I have one right now? Come on. All right. And so I encourage all of you, even if you didn't make it to the finals, please come back and watch your fellow competitors and see what it is that they've got to offer. So our judges tomorrow will be Diane Freeman, who's a partner at a local venture capital firm here, Voyager Capital, big venture capital firm both in Seattle and here in Portland. Ben Nahir, who is a partner with TIE and Elevate Capital here in Portland. Anthony Rodeo, who is a multi-exited CEO in software and e-commerce. And Michelle Tinsley, who runs a startup down in Phoenix, Arizona. So we've got a great set of judges. What do you guys think of the judges today? How'd it go? Were they nice? Did you feel like you got good feedback? What do you guys think about that? It's true. It's true. Did you learn something at least? Yes. Okay. I'm still going to stall. What else do we know? You want to go around the horn, see who's who? All right. Well, let's do it. How should we do that?
Name, school you're from, what you're studying, and
here's Paul, but we should do that anyways. Paul's here. All right. So quickly, I will just go around and start with you.
Hi, I'm Erin Harwell. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a second-year MBA student in sports business, and I don't have anything fun to say. I was trying to think of something cool to say.
I don't know.
Our partner, Nolan Dean from Los Angeles, University of Oregon, second-year MBA student in sports business as well. I love Star Wars, all things Star Wars. I'll say that.
Sweet. May the force be with you. All right. Back to the back. Harvard guys. Ooh, nice. All right.
My name is Holden Bruce. I did my master's at UVA, Virginia, in machine learning. Fun thing about me, DJ in the Brooklyn scene.
That's kind of cool. All right, follow him to a good time tonight, apparently. All right, over here in the corner.
Hey guys, I'm Vernon. From the e-commerce team from the University of Waterloo, studying math. Fun thing
Cool. Awesome. The rest of your team, yeah.
My name is Armand. I go to a university called Western in Canada. Fun fact, I have an identical twin brother.
Okay, cool. Welcome, Armand.
He always gets that one.
You're like, dude, that's not even funny anymore. Yeah.
I'm Drew, originally from Fort McMurray, Alberta. I study at the University of Waterloo with Maroon. Fun fact, I played competitive
Badminton, that's a thing in Canada. It's like a big deal. I had an NBA classmate who was like the female under whatever champion of badminton in Canada, and she was badass at everything. So I can hear you. I'm with you. Cool. All right, Miss.
All right, I'm Amy Hopper. I'm from the University of Arkansas in the EMBA program, and my favorite hobby is to mountain bike.
Nice, which is awesome in Northwest Arkansas. If you didn't know, the mountain biking there is epic.
I'm John Sherrill. I am a postdoctoral fellow in health sciences, innovation, and entrepreneurship at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, but we do our business classes at the University of Arkansas. And fun fact, Amy tried to kill me on mountain bike one day.
Sounds like you were having trouble keeping up. Awesome. 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 David?
Yeah, David Hinton, faculty advisor for Horizon Health Solutions.
Nice. Nice. All right, you two in the back there.
My name is Kai Scallard. We are from Washington University in St. Louis, and my fun fact is I was in Paris when the French team won the Soccer World Cup
Ooh.
years ago, and that was one of the coolest experiences of my entire life.
Dude.
Yeah,
That.
studying, I'm a dual degree medical and business student.
Yeah. So slacker.
Hi, I'm Isla, also with Speak It from Washington University in St. Louis. I'm an MBA student studying marketing and finance. My fun fact is that I was actually born in Portland.
Nice. Coming back home. All right, let's see who we got left. We got these three there. Yep. Oh, our Lymphosense. Tell us about yourself.
Hello, I'm Hunter Hutchinson from Hopkins, and I'm a graduate biomedical engineering master's student. And my fun fact is I am an avid skier. I've been 2 times, and I am looking forward to doing more.
Nice.
I'm committing to this sport. It's my new hobby.
Nice. Well, come on out here. You know, you can ski at Mount Hood until Labor Day. So come on out in the summer. You can surf in the morning and ski in the afternoon. Awesome. Lymphosense.
Yeah, all right. I'm Benji Montegudo. I'm also a graduate biomedical engineering student at Johns Hopkins. And my fun fact is I do stand-up comedy.
Oh, nice. You should be here. All right. Last, Ariel. Tell us about yourself. You're blocked by who? Cool. I guess that's good. Is it? Oh yeah, I know. I'm not forgetting about it. And Claw, what do you guys got? Our last crew.
I'm Jacob Kumbaum from Claw Industries. I'm an undergrad mechanical engineering student. Fun fact is my first time on the West Coast.
Oh, nice. What do you think?
It's great so far.
So far, so good. Yes.
I'm Veronica Snell from Binghamton University studying human development. And a fun fact about me is I ride motorcycles.
Oh, sweet. Road motorcycles? Yeah. Nice. Cool. Well, welcome all. I hope you had a great time. We have one more award to give out, and this is a sustainability award sponsored by Riff Beverages. Paul, do you want to say something about Riff real quick?
Well, what do you have to say about it? Most of you have tried it, I guess.
Yeah. Come on down, Paul. We can give this out with you. Oh, yes. I will hand him the mic. I don't like to share. Amy, I heard that.
They actually patterned white noise after my voice, so I know why he wanted me to have a microphone. No, Riff is a sustainably based, purpose-driven beverage brand out of Oregon, out of Bend, and the drink that, if you've tried it, is the nation's first certified carbon-neutral energy drink. Maybe even in the world, we don't know. There's no central repository for that information, so it's also upcycle certified. And days away from being verified non-GMO, we're really focused on sustainability throughout the supply chain. So,
you ready?
I am ready.
All right, and the Sustainability Award winner is Claw Industries.
We met virtually a couple weeks ago. Yes, you look so different in real life. It's amazing. Congratulations, you guys. Come on up.
Where's our socials people? There we go.
Congratulations.
There you go.
Appreciate it.
When I was a judge in the last round, and before hearing about Claw, I never thought I would get excited about concrete, and I've been thinking about concrete ever since your presentation. So nice work.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you guys. We'll get some pictures. And I do have to say, like, all of you are amazing, but these guys repped the whole concrete thing really well, don't you think? Like the boots and the jeans, the whole deal.
We love making people excited.
Some of you were probably like, who is this kid?
Thank you
Awesome.
very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
Awesome. All right. Cool. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for being patient.
Hey, no worries, man. No worries. You got business meetings across town. So in case you're wondering, one last plug for Riff. Their beverage is made from the coffee fruit. If you look it up, the coffee we drink is actually the seed of the coffee fruit, like a pear or a plum or whatever. So they actually take the fruit which gets thrown away otherwise, and they make a beverage out of it. So there's a couple billion pounds of this coffee fruit that gets thrown away every year. 70 billion pounds of this coffee fruit. So they're making a beverage out of it. So it's really cool. Yeah, and it's good stuff. So tell your people about it, and wherever you go off to when you go home, and get them pull their distribution out to wherever you are. All right, one last time. Tomorrow morning in this room at 9 a.m., Beam Commerce, 9:35, Claw Industries, Pico Produce. Ariel, you're up at 10:15, so you can sleep in a little bit if you want. And lastly, Lymphosense at 10:50. You can also sleep in. Don't go skiing, though. You won't make it back in time. But we'll be in here. And then tomorrow at 2:30? 2, we'll have our final awards presentations. Well, we will also have elevator. Oh, that's right. Sorry, I forgot. See, I don't have my piece of paper. So each one of the teams is expected to put somebody up here to do a 60-second elevator pitch, and there's money to be won from that as well. So, it is fun. It'll be 60 seconds. You guys done elevator pitches before? We're gonna have a big clock right behind you that you have to go against. So it should be a good time. With that, thank you for your time, attention, and efforts today. For those of you that aren't competing tomorrow, go out and have a crazy time on the town in Portland. For those of you that are, you could do that too, but it's at your own risk. And we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you all.